Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking die cuts, regular die cuts, and turning them into stencils and having some fun, doing some fun techniques. It's just a great way to stretch out your die cuts and use them in other ways besides just die cutting them and gluing them to paper. So let's get to it. These are all the die cuts that I'm going to be using in today's video. These are just various background or cover plate dies. I'm not using that birch tree, so bloop, you don't see that. But all the rest of them, these are just cover plate or background dies that I have in my stash that I've had for quite some time. If they are still available for purchase, I'll link them in the supply list. So all I did was die cut all of those things with paper. That's it. Again, ignore that blue birch tree. My dog ate it. I'm not kidding. I kid you not. The dog ate the trees. I will give you one guess if you know my dogs to figure out which one that is. Okay, so this is one of the die cuts. Just ran it through a die cutting machine with regular white cardstock. This is not specialty watercolored paper, anything like that. Take a couple of color ink pads that I have and smush this onto my glass mat. Use a plastic plate, use a glass, use plastic packaging, use an acrylic block if you don't work off of a glass surface. And then I'm just basically smushing the panel onto the various watered down ink splotches, you see? So you can create a really fun background here. You can use as many colors as you want to keep it masculine. You can keep it monochromatic or maybe choose your recipient's favorite color. You can do a rainbow. You can do whatever because you pretty much can see where you're going to be pushing the, where you're going to be picking up the ink. And then you're left with that. We're going to take this panel one step further, but you can leave it as is and you have a beautiful background ready to go, ready to glue down to a card base and do whatever. But we're going to go one step further. I'm going to take that same panel, and this is to create a second card background, and I'm just using a blender brush that I have and some embossing ink, and I am just putting some embossing ink through part of the die cut. So I'm actually the die cut panel. I'm actually treating the die cut panel as a stencil. So you can leave that panel as is when you're done, glue it down, you've got a great background. But you can get a twofer. I'm a big fan of a 2-for-1, a twofer. So just go ahead and add some embossing ink through those little spots. You can use whatever kind of blending tool you have. Use your fingers, use your finger daubers, use whatever. And you can kind of see, because it's a little dirty, where my embossing ink is. Now, if you want to do something a little extra, you already have some embossing ink on that die cut panel, so you can add embossing powder to that die cut panel. If that's not your cup of tea, just leave that die cut panel alone and that embossing ink will dry clear and it will look like nothing ever happened to it. And then I'll go ahead and add the embossing ink colors on the panel that we just blended the embossing ink through. And then you get these looks. So again, if you're not a huge fan of adding all that color to the water, if you like that watercolor look, then just completely let that embossing ink dry and call it a day. But I wanted a twofer, I got a twofer, and I'm pretty happy. Now this is a no-brainer. This is a pretty cool die. I grabbed an old box. I'm going to use a spray, any kind of spray you want. Give it a spray with whatever sprays you've got, make your own, and now you've got a twofer. Just like that, like, hi, in about 20 seconds. That's it. That's so easy. All right, so this panel, let's go ahead and pull in some embossing paste. This is an oldie, man. I've had this for 4 years and this baby is still going strong. So in this point, I'm going to take some black cardstock and I'll just add a little bit of tape to the corners so it doesn't shift around. And then I'm going to frost my cake. I'm just going to add the embossing paste right through the die cut panel and we'll be able to use both pieces. We'll be able to use the die cut panel and the background that we're creating for our twofer. So go ahead and spread that through, make it nice, even. If you want it lumpy, make it lumpy. It's really completely up to you. And then clean your tool. Clean your blending brush as soon as possible. Don't let all that paste dry on your blending tool. Just rinse it off with warm water. And at this case, I have some powder. This is shimmer powder. You can use Ken Oliver Color Burst, mica powder, whatever you have. Just add a couple colors. I'm going to do it to both panels because we've got embossing paste on both panels. Give it a light spritz just to activate the powder. And then let it dry, leave it alone, do nothing, go away, go eat a sandwich. And when you come back, it'll be ready to do. So we've got a little twofer here, right? Any kind of color, pigment, and powders will work for this. All right, that's why that's drying. Let's go on and create a little scene here. We're just going to do some basic ink blending with whatever colored inks that you have. Of course, I use Catherine Puller inks on my channel, so that's what I'm using here. and I'll just do some basic ink blending. I grabbed some fun colors that I thought look well together, and that's all I'm doing. And just use whatever colors float your boat. You can keep it all one color, rainbow, monochromatic, whatever you want to do. And then just go ahead and finish that out. Make sure you get good, even blending all around your surface here. Don't worry about the middle of that card or anything like that. Just wait till we're finished. So be happy, get your blending in. That looks like a big, fat, hot, disgusting mess. Don't worry about it. Fear not, people, fear not. Add a few bit of water droplets, just a little bit, to activate the ink on the paper. Again, that's regular cardstock, not watercolored cardstock. Then I dabbed up the the water droplets off of the card panels, and then check it out. Check it out, check it out. Using that negative space on the inside of that die cut is so cool. Normally, when you die cut that, you throw that middle piece away. In this instance, we used it. All right, this is Nouveau Glimmer Paste. You kind of use the same application as we did with the embossing paste. This is just a different medium. It's got like sparkly bits of glimmer and whatever mica powder, whatever's in there to make this concoction is what it is. There are many kinds of pastes on the market. I'm sure Tim Holtz has something. He seems to have everything. I think Simon Hurley released something called Lunar Pastes, which are similar. This is Nouveau Glimmer Paste. But anyway, so I'm just going ahead, and that looks ugly. I know, all these things look ugly until you get the full reveal and you see it when it's done. But it's all just smudged not is a word, all over that panel. And then peel it apart and you've got your little twofer. So the one to the left, that middle spot, is normally the negative piece of the die cut that you would throw away. It looks cool, but to give you an option, if you don't like incorporating that negative space, just take the same die cut, make sure your paste is dry, line it up, and just die cut it. And then you can remove that middle place. And then you've got these two pieces right here that we're going to build into cards. Got a twofer once again. Just that little bit of glimmer paste on that white panel is quite pretty. All right, so here's a look at everything now it's dry. So this is the embossing paste with the mica powder. Then we've got this. This is obvious. This was a spray. Super easy. These, we just did the basic ink blending on those two colored panels, and then I just ran the same dye through with black cardstock for when we assemble those cards. And then here's the little bit of embossing we did. It was the first card panel we made at the beginning of the video. So now we have all these different panels that are ready to be turned into cards, or at least the beginning of cards. So for this one, this is the one where we basically mushed a couple of ink colors onto the glass, and then we did embossing over the top. So this looks really good when you add black cardstock to the back of it. It's that contrasting dark color that really brings that to life. And the one to the left is already ready to be glued to a card base, so we don't have to do anything with that. Okay, so here's the one where we did that ink blending, and then we just flicked on some water at the end. And then again, I just ran that same die cut through with some black cardstock. Again, I think a dark color, think a navy blue, a dark gray, a black. Just that contrast with those bright colors really makes everything so beautiful. So at this point, all I need to do is glue on that background. I can line it up. You can see where all the leaves are left. Just line it up. I'm using my favorite glue there, Barely Arts glue. And that one's done. And then we'll do the same thing with this one. Again, the contrasting dark with the brightness is really just amazing. But you can also go on and add a blue if you want to, which is what I do in this case, in case you just don't want to see black card bases all the time. So basically what I typically do is just pull out different colors of cardstock and lay it side by side and see whichever one I like the best. That's my science to it. Just whatever looks good to me is what I go with. And then this is the glimmer paste one. Again, I'm going to put that against a black card base. I love pink and gray, and then it's sparkly, right? It's so cool. Now here's the one where we just did the spray. So this one is I'm just going to pop that center focal point up right in the center of a black card. I'm sorry, I'm a little off frame here, but that's got that sparkle and that glimmer and that shine. And then the negative space that you can see at the top of the video, it's ready for a card base, right? I'm just basically assembling these panels together so they can be glued to a card base. I'm getting them card ready, if you will. This is the embossing one with the color bursts on there, and then of course that other one is ready to go. Rock and roll, baby. Let's see what we've got here. So this one had that little bit of pink around it. That's the one that had the glimmer paste, and we did the dye over the top. So I decided to go back to what I did at the beginning of the video and just add a little bit of color this way, because some of that pink was showing through but not a lot of it. And so I'm just going to go and add a little bit of color this way. and I'm done. This will be ready to be glued onto a card panel. So you get a little of that watercolor look and also that pink around the edges. So I glued that down to a pink card base, and now this panel is ready to be built out onto a card. So what am I going to do with that? You have to wait and see. Here's all the backgrounds we made in the card video today. So they either worked alone or they needed to be glued to some kind of card panel to be ready to be turned into cards. This one is the panel all by itself. It was the embossing paste with the sprinkled mica powder. Why the embossing paste was wet is the look that I got here. And here's the other half of that card. And this one did need to be glued down to a black card surface, but it's all ready to be turned into a card. And I just love the look of all of that mica powder all over the top. Both of these cards are just so stunning and actually have so much texture in real life that's very hard to capture on camera. Then we have this one. This is where we did all that ink blending that looked butt ugly as I was doing it. But once it's got the water spots on there and came together, it just is really beautiful and I love it against the black silhouette. And here is the other half of that card. So again, I love twofers. They're everything. This was this is a 10-second card, just a spritz of the spray, and you got twofer. You got this part, and then you got this part, which I just popped up with some foam dimension onto a black card base. And these two guys are ready to be turned into cards. They're just waiting. They're staring at me, saying, "Finish me." And then finally, we've got these two. This is the glitter maste. That's not a word. Glitter paste. And then, of course, the embossed image that we did at the very beginning of the video. So I've got all of these backgrounds, and these guys are all beautiful things that were created with die cuts, but using different ways and techniques on how to decorate the die cuts, if you will, but they're ready to be turned into cards. So we need to do that, but you got to come back for the next video. The next video is going to be a real-time video on how I turn all of these cards. These are all card ready. They are ready to go. The panels are done, but they're obviously missing the final elements to make them a card. So the next video is going to be a real-time video on how I use my magic mug to finish out all my cards. It'll be real time. You are going to be blown away with how quickly I can turn all of these into cards just by using my magic mug. So I'll see you next time.